Hello, community, and welcome back to another Keep It Real with DrAnita podcast. I am your host, DrAnita Polite Wilson, C-Suite Trusted Advisor, Board Director, and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategy Consultant, helping members of the C-Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. And today I have back with us Tish Norman, and she is here for our real conversation from the C-Suite, our series representing and exploring and celebrating Juneteenth. Tish, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm looking forward to picking up where we left off.
Yeah.
So in our last conversation, we were talking about ignorance, and not to be derogatory, but to say people don't know what they don't know. And your point, the last point that you had was, if people were to look around their normal familiar surroundings and consider broadening that scope, who might they see, what they might see? And Juneteenth seems to me to be an opportunity to do that. And we'll be celebrating that on Wednesday, June 19th. So what are your thoughts on that?
Let me give you a quick example. Excuse me. I spent many years training, educating, consulting, leading, advising in a non-campus based role, fraternities and sororities. Okay. And I have spoken with majority organizations, would be your majority white fraternal and sororal organizations. Of course, NPHC, which is the 9 historically Black Greek organizations, the organizations that are in the multicultural space, which would include everybody from Pacific Islander, Asian, Latinx groups. It goes on and on to even local independent level organizations. I was intimidated when I started in that space because my experience as a Black woman who attended an HBCU, who joined the first African-American sorority, that was my perspective. Mm-hmm. I had only, and this is real talk, this might be the first time somebody's hearing me say that, my only perspective of what Black Greeks were came from my experience in my family and on my campus. Mm-hmm. My experience and introduction and limited exposure to white organizations, not to mention multicultural, because that wasn't even in my stratosphere. The white organizations was 2 things. Animal House when I was a young kid and I couldn't even watch it because it had nudity in it.
Right.
And Revenge of the Nerds.
Right.
And those were on cable channels, and our cable was monitored in our house.
So I want to pause right there, because first of all, I appreciate you saying real talk. That's why this is called Real Conversations from the C-Suite. But then to your point about your only perspective on what you thought white life was like was those 2 movies. Mm-hmm. I find it revealing and refreshing that you would share that, because as a Black person, we get upset when white people or anybody else likes to base their knowledge on Black folks, not on lived experience, but on what they see in the media, right, what they see in the movies, what they read, and I'm sorry, what they see in the 6 o'clock news.
Oh, yes, you're right. Now, let me clarify, not white life, but white fraternity and sorority life.
Right, fraternity. Thank you for the correction.
Right? Yes. That was what my exposure of it was. And notice I said limited exposure.
Right.
So when I became engrossed in teaching and learning from and educating and training these same students in majority organizations, guess what I had to do, everybody?
Unlearn some things.
I had to read, I had to research, I had to watch, I had to listen, I had to interview, I had to become engrossed in the community that I was going to be supporting, that I had limited perspective on. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in the same way, right? The teams you lead who are diverse at work, the teams you lead that may look different than the community that you live in, that the community that your children, the school that your children attend, the church that you attend, your life outside of work. I needed to become more knowledgeable so that I could relate and lead, and my words would resonate with people who look different than I did and had different experiences than I did.
Now, let me ask you something. Based on what you just said, I consider that to be a human affirming approach to leadership. I consider that to be inclusive leadership. Now, in our last program, you mentioned the fact that we've got all these generations, 5 different generations. And although boomers and traditionalists there are fewer of those than there are Gen Z, Gen X, and millennials. Let's be clear about that.
Sure.
It's a different way of looking at leadership and a different way of leading. Earlier on, when you and I were coming up through the ranks, and it was still, this is the job, just do it. And when you come through the door, leave your personal self at home. And then when you walk out the door, you can pick up your personal self. And now people are coming into the workspace saying, this is me. Do my personal beliefs align with the corporate beliefs? I've been triggered. I need a safe space. This is the reality of today's leaders. So when you think about that, and what you just, the way you just described leadership is, I need to have an understanding of the lived experiences of the folks that I'm leading. What's being lost in translation these days?
There's no understanding. The lack of understanding, the lack of effort in getting the understanding.
There it is, the lack of effort.
Intentionality. You cannot lead effectively in 2024 with a micro perspective.
Please say that again. Please say that. You must say that again. Say that again.
You cannot lead effectively or with impact in 2024 with a micro perspective. You must adopt with intentionality a macro perspective so that your impact has ripple effects.
But here's the thing. If I'm the leader, what I say still goes. If I'm the leader, I'm still running the show. If I'm the leader, why do I need to figure out everybody else when everybody else needs to figure out what makes me happy as the leader?
Well, then you're a manager. You're not a leader. You're a boss. You're not a leader. There is a distinct difference between leader and manager. A leader,
and you and I both know this because we've studied this.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's still the prevailing school of thought. If on the org chart, if I'm the one at the top, then that's it. Everybody else needs to understand me. I don't need to understand anybody else. And even though that's still the structure in some places, that doesn't work. And yet, why don't we want to acknowledge that that type of leadership doesn't cut it anymore?
Oh, why don't we want to? Well, people aren't explaining. They're just leaving. So when you have resumes that have new jobs every 18 to 24 months or 48, 36 months, and you have employee turnover and you are very high on the scale of a lack of employee retention, or you have employee retention, but morale is low, employee motivation is at an all-time low. And we're talking pre-COVID. We're not even talking about the challenges that came post-2020, right? That's why that type of dominant, authoritative leading with an iron fist does not cut it anymore. And those people who do lead that way, they better watch it, because these millennials and Gen Zs, they're not having it. They are cut from a different cloth. They are leading with their hearts. They are, and look, this may be controversial too, but guess what? I'm gonna say it.
Real conversations from the C-suite. Say it.
Hashtag real talk.
Right.
Quietly, come on. I mean, and I can't say it's everybody, but sometimes some people are doing stuff for the gram. Sometimes they're doing it for clout.
And how can we encourage corporations to do something different for Juneteenth in our last couple of minutes?
Go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Let me reintroduce to my team what really matters. Yeah. That's when we'll see a different approach. And that's when you'll be able to say, you know what, in that same vein, let's celebrate Juneteenth. Let's introduce or reintroduce our team to a significant holiday that our entire society should celebrate and our entire world should know about, not just inclusive to America or exclusive to America, but that our entire world should know about. Because as I always say, DrAnita, Black history is U.S. history and U.S. history is world history.
Community, we're going to pause right there and we're going to have a week to think about that. Miss Tish Norman, you know what? You need to hurry and go on and walk across the stage so I can start calling you by your right name. Dr. Tish, we're going to get you there. Wow, community. This is why I thought it would be a fascinating real conversation from the C-suite with Tish Norman, adjunct professor of African American Studies at Kentucky State University. We've got 2 more conversations, so please come back. In the meantime, if you want to hear this one again, please go to the website, DrAnita.com. Remember to spell out the word doctor. And once you get to the landing page, at the top, you want to look for that link that says Keep It Real Podcast. And while you're there, please feel free to check out my resources and my services. In the meantime, please get in the flow with me. Follow, like, and overshare any podcast that helps you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Share them with your network. Until next time, this is DrAnita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.